Hey everybody, it's Candace Renee, and welcome back to my channel, Surviving and Thriving the Black Experience. I'm so happy my family is back. Hey y'all! We are going to dive into so much content. So before I even do this, I need y'all to make sure that you have your notes open in your phone and or a pen and a piece of loose leaf and or I don't care if it's a post-it note, something for you to be able to take away some information. And I'm old school. It's always easier to remember something when you actually use your hand to write it down. So, as Surviving and Thriving a Black Experience, I dive into those unfiltered realities of us being Black and us specifically being in corporate America. So, last week, I tackled the mindset of scarcity thinking. That's that limited mindset that makes us believe that we're never enough. It's never enough opportunities, resources, or recognition to go around, which often leads to our burnout. We also compete with one another, and we also go through phases of stagnation where we are too afraid to be entrepreneurs and have our own. I broke down how this shows up in our lives, from hoarding information, knowledge, to fearing collaboration, and how it's time for us to break free from this cycle. Today, I'm going to be shifting the gears to tackle the two often overlooked issues that affects us all: colorism and texturism in the office. So, from biases in the hiring practices to microaggressions, remember that, microaggressions in the workplace. We'll explore how these subtle yet pervasive forms of discrimination impact our careers and identities. So, without further ado, we're going to get into this, and Candace Renee is going to break this down. So, away we go. So, we're going to hop right into it. Colorism and texturism did not start in the boardroom, it started as a mentality on the plantation. So, let's review the almighty power trip, where African Americans were divided by skin tone, where lighter skinned people were forced to work in the house, and where darker skinned people were forced to labor in the fields. This division was not just about work, it was about power and about the proximity to whiteness. Long after the chains were removed, the hierarchy stayed in classrooms, in media, and yes, in the boardroom. So let's fast forward to now, where that messaging is still whispered, where lighter is deemed as better and straighter hair is safer. Professionals still have the tendency to look a certain way. So today we talk about this because if we don't name it, we don't change it. As we're talking about colorism and texturism, you need to know that this shows up in meetings, hiring decisions, dress code, and even in compliments. It's real, it's harmful, and it's past time that we name it. So how do we get here? Well, we need to know exactly what it is. Colorism is the favoring of lighter skin over darker skin within the Black community and outside of it. Texturism is the preference for looser, straighter, or softer hair textures over kinkier or tightly coiled hair. You might have heard someone say, her hair is so nappy. Guess what? These aren't new, and it definitely does something to our psyche, at which I'll in fact go more in detail later in this presentation. As I said, this ain't new. They're the result of colonialism, slavery, media, and centuries of white supremacist beauty standards. And while we've made some progress, these biases still show up in ways that are subtle but still damaging. So, as I said before, I want to be able to build your capacity for you to be able to connect your own dots, as well as to, in fact, link the links together. So, I want to talk and dive into classical conditioning. So I need you to get your pen and your paper and or your notes ready in your phone. Don't worry, this is not a test. I will give you all the answers and also tell you when to take the actual notes. So I'm going to talk about Ivan Pavlov. So Ivan is known in regards to the understanding and the terminology in regards to animals as well as human response due to stimuli. So Pavlov demonstrated how a neutral stimulus, when paired repeatedly with an unconditioned stimulus, can evoke a conditioned response. An example of this can be how Black women become conditioned to associate certain environmental behaviors and microaggressions with anxiety, stress, and self-censorship. So I want you to hold that and remember the words conditioned response. Another example of this would be repeated subtle exclusion or biased feedback. Remember that neutral stimuli paired with a negative outcome. So just write that part down. Neutral stimuli paired with a negative outcome, which may lead to a conditioned emotional response like silence or hypervigilance. Again, I want you to stay on that for a second, because if you ever had an interaction with someone where you've been in trouble or something has happened that you know you're not in the wrong and you shut down. Shut down, silence, same thing. And or have you ever been within the workplace where you've had to feel and be hypervigilant because you don't trust anyone? This has been a conditioned response. So I need you to understand this, because I told you, I'm going to build this capacity and you are going to be a fierce individual no matter what environment you are within. So I know that was a lot. So now we're going to hop into operant conditioning. So this was coined by B.F. Skinner, whose work focused on reinforcement and punishment shaping behaviors. Simply put, positive reinforcement increases behaviors versus punishment decreases them, right? In the workplace, Black women experience operant conditioning when certain behaviors, such as speaking up and expressing cultural identity, are punished overtly or covertly by exclusion, reprimand, or lack of advancement, while conforming to dominant norms, such as professional speech and appearance, is reinforced. This leads to the dimming of our light, or modifying behaviors to fit expectations to gain rewards to avoid adverse actions. Think about that for a second. To avoid adverse actions. Black women may unconsciously learn to suppress aspects of their identity or talents due to conditioned responses to workplace cultures that subtly or overtly devalue them. Conditioning can maintain systematic inequalities by reinforcing behaviors that align with dominant, often white, workplace norms, and punish or ignore those that challenge them. Understanding this to highlight why systematic change is necessary, not just individual behavior modification. So you have to understand the psyche to understand this. We made it through physiology and psychology. I know that was a lot, but like I told you before, I was going to build this capacity and you were going to have the aha moments and those epiphanies. But I want to go ahead, for those of you who are still kind of thinking like, that can't be me. I'm still thinking too much. It can't be me. All right, I'm going to give you a few more examples of how this shows up at work. A dark-skinned woman being passed over for a customer-facing role. That's an example. Compliments, like you're so articulate. That is called a microaggression. Natural hair being labeled unprofessional, while straight hair being seen as polished and or acceptable. These are all ways that colorism and texturism show up in the workplace. And I guarantee you, yourself and or if not yourself, you know someone who's lived this. So remember I was just mentioning microaggressions? Well, I'm going to go ahead and dip my toe, just a toe, into explaining this, because I'm going to expand on this in a future video, because there are actually 3 types. And so you will, by the time I go get done with that video, you're going to have the capacity to understand when all 3 of them are being shown and what to do. But in regards to microaggressions regarding this presentation, someone's saying, is that your real hair? That is a microaggression. You'd be so pretty if you had colored eyes. That is a microaggression. And you should straighten your hair for the interview. It's not just about hurt feelings. It's about whose leadership is trusted and whose voices are validated, and who gets to have the opportunity to rise. So we get to the section of the cost, right? I'm going to break this down from personal experiences, and I know you or someone else may have felt this before. It is nothing like going to work or doing anything that you really enjoy doing, and you are what they call metaphorically bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, only to have your aspirations and or your feelings and that light within you dimmed. These biases don't just divide us, they limit us. They tell dark-skinned women that they have to dim their light to be accepted. They tell people with locks that you have to cut your hair to be respected. They tell young professionals that proximity to whiteness equals professionalism. It don't make sense. So how do we combat this, Candace Renee? Well, I'll tell you. We combat this by telling the truth. That professionalism is not based upon proximity to whiteness. So no, you don't have to dress a certain way and have your hair a certain way to be respected. Absolutely not. Leadership does not have a skin tone, period. And excellence comes in every curl, twist, lemonade braid, lock, curly, and or afro pattern. We have a role to play in calling this out gently, firmly, and consistently. If you are in a room, at a table, or in a hiring process, your voice is important. Speak up when textured hair is policed. Speak up when shade bias is shaping decisions, because it matters. So, my final words. In closing, to my dark skin and light skin men and women, and to those ones who rocking those 4C crowns, you belong here. You deserve to be seen, heard, celebrated, not in spite of how you look, but because of every story that you carry. So I want to take the time to say thank you so much for watching Surviving and Thriving the Black Experience with Candace Renee. I am so happy that I was able to give you this particular presentation. I know this was a lot of information. We talked about psychology and physiology, and I know some of y'all probably like, what in the world? But I told you, building that capacity, baby, is what we gonna do. You are going to be a force, do you hear me, to be reckoned with. And if you're feeling, a little timid right now, when you're like, no, I don't know what to say or what to do, I want to challenge you, and I want to tell you to understand that it's never just you. And I also want to tell you that it's never just only happening to you. This ain't new of what's been happening to us as people. And so I need you to understand, and my great cousin, as a matter of fact, she had to let me know when I went through a situation that, baby, do you know how strong you are? Do you know how strong your family lineage is? Do you know how strong your ancestors were? So anytime that you get scared, afraid, or you feel you got to dim that light, honey, if you don't take that veil off and let that beam shine through, I'm trying to tell you, you'll feel that you can move mountains as you can. Next week, I'm going to be talking about identifying boardroom behaviors, because if some of y'all like me, I need a little bit more insight. I need a little bit more information to understand, like, is this really happening to me? It is. But I'm going to be going over boardroom behavior so that you can understand exactly what it looks like in a modern day context. Now, I know each of my actual presentations go over some, but I'm going to do a well deep dive. So you ain't got no more questions, and you ain't got to pick up the crumbs of like, oh, is this? No, I'm going to tell you the straight piece of what a boardroom behavior looks like. So from Surviving and Thriving the Black Experience, I thank you. Please follow, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And also, if you have stories, please send them to my email. So from Surviving and Thriving the Black Experience, I'll see you next time.